Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. I'm your host, Jack McCullough. By day, I'm the president and founder of the CFO Leadership Council. You can follow us on rockstarcfos.com, and we have a great guest today, so let's rock. My guest today is Kelly Mahncke. She is the CFO of USA Hockey. Kelly, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thank you, Jack. Pleased to be here today.
Cool. And before we get into it, I want to ask, because when I was researching you, I came across, now they pronounce it differently than you, but Mahncke Park in San Antonio. Are you familiar with that one?
I am familiar with that park. I personally have never been, but my dad and brother both went, and it was kind of fun walking down memory lane.
But you're not related to that Mahncke?
Apparently, there was a Hans Mahncke that was related to the founder of the hotel in that park in that area. And
okay.
Apparently we are. Now, I can't prove it, but I believe we are.
Yeah, I'm sure one of those ancestry.com, you could probably find it out or something. So
yeah.
Your cousins were cousins. Your grandparents were cousins or something like that, but cool. But anyway, the name is somewhat apparent, but why don't you share a little about USA Hockey and what your mission is?
I'd be happy to. USA Hockey, we are under the umbrella of the USOPC. And so most people believe what we do at USA Hockey is we send teams to the Olympics. And we do that. So we send men's teams to the Olympics, women's teams to the Olympics, and then sled teams to the Olympics. But what surprised me when I first got here is really we're a youth sports organization. So yes, we do those things, but we do a lot more. We are really looking to develop both players, officials, and coaches across the United States in hockey, and really kind of help grow the game. And so USA Hockey, we have a number of different companies under our umbrella. We have our operating company, and that's really probably what we'll talk about the most today. We also have a foundation, and under our foundation, we own an arena, a drive-in, a concession, a restaurant, and then we actually have our own insurance company as well, our own captive insurance company. And that's, I spend a lot of time in that area too. So it just gives you a little bit of framework. We have over 1 million members at USA Hockey across the United States. And so a lot of those are volunteers, and they play a huge part in what we do here at USA Hockey.
Cool. And I understand you yourself play a little hockey. And
I have to pinch myself every day that I get to be here at USA Hockey. It's funny how I got into hockey. My came from a long line of hockey players, and it took me probably about 5 years to convince my parents to let me play hockey. And finally, they acquiesced. I was quite persistent, and so I started playing about 13 years old, and then I went on to play in college for a couple of years, and now I get to work in hockey, and played here locally in Colorado for a high school hockey team, and we won state one year, and so that was a lot of fun. And that was kind of before any girls or women were playing hockey, so certainly in Colorado. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, good for you for your persistence, because I know back then there were, boy sports and girl sports, right? And, ice hockey was definitely not a lot of girls were playing it at the time. There was field hockey, I suppose, right? So
that's great. Absolutely. Yes. 3 broken collarbones later, and here we are.
Yeah. How about that? So, well, I've always said, like, as hockey expands, it's the best sport to watch in person. And like, I was in Seattle when they were getting their hockey team, and that's what I said. I'm guessing none of you have seen hockey at the arena. It's such a phenomenal game to watch. I mean, football is kind of made for TV, right? But for an in-person sporting event, I've never seen anything more exciting than a well-played hockey game.
I concur. It's a great game to see in person. It's electric being in the stands, and I would agree with that.
Well, given your passion in your youth and your educational background, probably more than just about anyone I know, you're in the perfect job for yourself at this point in your career, I have to think.
I would agree. I'm very fortunate.
So cool. Well, I'd like to, before we get into the business stuff, just a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Okay. And you've lived there your entire life then? Or Colorado?
I've lived here all except for a couple years where I went to play hockey at St. Lawrence University in upstate New York. And then I moved to Denver, lived in Denver for 20 years until I was recruited to come over at USA Hockey and work at USA Hockey.
Okay, cool. And I know in college you studied economics and got an MBA. So you were born towards, we had an aptitude, excuse me, I'm going to start that one over. Can't talk. So, well, that's great. I know you studied economics in undergraduate and got an MBA. So it seems like you had a natural affinity towards business and finance. Is that correct? Did you sort of figure that out at a relatively young age?
I did. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And I've always been fascinated more so in microeconomics. I like macro as well, but business has always been something that I've been very interested in. And I really enjoyed the program, and I graduated from Colorado College with the econ background. And then I waited a little while and got some more experience under my belt before I went back to get my MBA with an emphasis in finance.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's wise. And, everybody that gets an MBA, I think any business professional, it's a great credential in them. I also think when I hear people getting it immediately out of undergraduate, sort of think, gee, it's too bad he couldn't get 3-5 years of experience to get it. Sounds like you did that. So
makes a big difference. Did for me anyway.
Yeah, I got my, undergrad the same time as most of my classmates, 22, but I was 31 when I got my master's degree, completed it. So, I walked into it, I had 7-8 years of experience. So, and it made me appreciate it so much more. So, but cool. But anyway, one thing, I was looking at your career path, and I won't say that you've worked for nonprofits, because that's not the case, but the companies that you've worked for seem to have a philanthropic mission. USA Mobility, which is the medical devices, and then Arapahoe House. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Arapahoe House.
And now, thank you. And now you're working for USA Hockey, and these are all of these organizations. They seem like they're making the world a better place to live. It's in their own ways. And is that something that comes natural to you? Were you sort of raised that way, or is it something that you sort of developed in your career path?
I wish I could say that it was. It really wasn't something that I thought about or planned. Everything kind of fell into place. But I will tell you, one of the most rewarding things that I've done is working in companies that have a mission and really almost a greater contribution to the greater good. It does really impact your anytime you come to work and how you feel about what you're doing and the work that you're doing. Even in finance and IT, you're still making a positive difference to the mission of the organization, and that part is fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. You actually worded it exactly the way I was trying to. So
we're on the same page.
That's cool. But so tell me a little about the progression, because you probably, the 22-year-old version, probably didn't see yourself as the CFO for Hockey Association at some point in your career. But, was some of these planned out thoughtfully, or is it more just like, hey, that's a great opportunity, I'm going to jump on it type of thing? Or did you have a mission?
I graduated from a liberal arts school, and it was, you start in kindergarten, you go to first grade and then second grade, and everything's kind of laid out. And I thought, wow, what am I going to do next? I knew I wanted to do something in business and probably finance, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. My first job out of college was an accountant. And I saw the salespeople, oh gosh, they seemed like they had such a fun job, and they were busy all the time and out of the office, and they just seemed like they did really well financially. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Maybe I want to get into that. And so, I got into business development and did a little bit of that, and that was really interesting, and I enjoyed it. But I think when I think about where I wanted to be, I looked at, how do I want to spend my days? Right? Do I want to spend my days, engaged in things that are mentally challenging and interesting? Do I want to spend my time, in a more social type job? Do I want to spend my time more in a individual type pursuits? And that really helped me kind of think about what I wanted to do with my career. And then, I started working backwards. So I started looking at some people that I, knew and jobs that they had. And I worked backwards. I thought, wow, that's a pretty cool job. What type of background do you need to have that kind of job? And so I kind of did a lot of research that way in terms of, what my strengths were and what jobs seemed really appealing to me, and started working backwards.
So interesting that, yeah, that definitely a unique approach. So good for you. Yeah, that's right. I was kind of that way too. It's sort of like after elementary school, I went to middle school and then to high school and then to college, just because that's what all my friends were doing, right? So, but yeah, it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I realized I could deviate from the standard path. So, but I want to get back to your organization, and let's talk a little about what your mission is, and critically how you, as the financial head of that organization, can support the organization's missions and goals.
What's really interesting, so we've worked really with a lot of focus on our new strategic plan. And it does have a lot of finance focus in it, which is a bit unusual for a nonprofit. And so our executive director is terrific. He's leading the charge, and we've got a great group of people on the leadership team that are really helping push this forward. But one of the most important things we can do is grow the game. And that really helps us, serve our mission for sure, but also how do we impact more people in a positive way? How do we grow our revenue? How do we do that in a thoughtful way as well? And so we're really striving for a 4% surplus every year. That in turn, we're very cyclical with the Olympics and how we operate, but we're trying to kind of even that out and be, have a little bit more consistency in our revenue and expenses. But that's a huge part of what we're doing. And so, yes, we also want to take into account safety in the game. We talked a little bit too about diversity, equity, and inclusion and how important that is in our game. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but there is a big slant to the financial strength of the organization embedded within the strategic plan. And so working very closely with the executive director and the board and our senior staff, how do we drive that mission forward, and how do we kind of weave it into everything that we do? And that actually, I think, is really important, because sometimes in a nonprofit, you can lose sight of that piece, right? The importance of margin, there is no mission without margin. And so, but here, I think we're doing a much better job of that. And it's fun to be a part of.
Somehow I've never heard that expression before. There's no mission without margin.
Oh.
So, but that's great. But yeah, that's what, like, sometimes people, who don't work in the nonprofit sector, when I talk to them, they just think, oh, nice people, mission centric, and whatnot. Their finance isn't critical. It's like, no. I mean, they need to be like ruthlessly efficient in the nonprofit sector financially, right? I mean, sure, a lot of them it is about the mission and not about making a dollar per se, but that almost puts more pressure on the finance team. So
absolutely. And we talked about this a little bit before. In hospitals seem to get that. It's funny, they can be very, very profitable, but yet they're a nonprofit. And so they're very focused on that. And again, how you can serve more people. But yeah, by and large, you're absolutely correct. Most nonprofits are, not as focused on the bottom line.
Yeah, no, nor should they be. But I tell my friends who work like at venture capital backed companies or something like that, when things are slowing down a little bit and they need to, cut expenses, I just say, talk to someone in the nonprofit sector. You think you're cutting expenses, you're a rank amateur compared to some of the things that they've learned to live without. So
it's great advice.
Indeed. So cool. Well, I'm curious, you've with something like this, you try to build a world-class team to support some of your goals. Tell me a little about your team. How many people report to you in the world of finance and accounting?
Oh, good question. I did not count. What I can tell you is IT rolls up to me, finance, treasury, accounting rolls up to me, admin rolls up to me, our facilities rolls up to me, insurance. And so a lot of departments, we're for the size of our revenue, we have very few employees, which is very interesting. And I can explain a little bit more about that. But we have roughly 155 employees across all of our all of our companies. And for the revenue that we do, that's a small number of employees. So we really rely heavily on our volunteers, or as we often refer to our volunteers as our unpaid professionals. And they do an immense amount of work, and in collaboration with them, we're able to really do a lot of work. But off the top of my head, I would say roughly 5 people report directly to me.
Okay, so and so yeah, enough that you know all of them on a first name basis and that type of thing. So, but
yes, we have a lot of communication.
yeah, so interesting. And I'm thinking, someone like you, you're probably very concerned with developing them in a mentor type of role. So do you embrace that in your role as sort of the leader of the organization, that you're mentoring them and help them become as good as they can be professionally?
I really enjoy that part of it. One of the things that is unique to USA Hockey is we have people that have been here for over 30 years, and a very high percentage that have been here for a very long time. And so the mentoring I've done hasn't been so much at USA Hockey. I do really enjoy that, but many people have been here. I mean, I think I probably have 6 or 7 people on my team that have been here 25, 30 years, which is remarkable, right? But I am bringing in some new people, and that part is fun, and the mentoring piece is a lot of fun, and learning about them and where they want to go and how I can help support that. And some of the younger folks in IT, over the last several years, helping them figure out where do they want to be, what do they want to do, where do they want to go, and be supportive of that. And I think that our leadership team does that pretty well, and we communicate with one another. So you may have somebody that might be in our development group, and they want to work in high performance, or they want to work on the international side. And we're very good at supporting that because we have such relatively low turnover. Some of the more entry level jobs, we have more turnover, but really we don't have a ton of turnover. And so trying to give people the opportunity to grow, and whether that's through education or that's through different opportunities in different areas, we try and do that. But the majority of my mentoring has been really outside of this particular role and in prior roles, which has been a lot of fun.
Interesting. So you yourself, when you were climbing the ranks, did you have any significant mentors who stick out that made a big impact on your career growth?
I'm so glad you asked that. I had many mentors, 2 in particular, that really were incredibly important to my success and my development. One is Verge Setzer, and he was my professor in one of my professors getting my MBA. He's also an executive coach. And the growth that I had working with him after I graduated propelled me beyond what I could have imagined, right? He challenged me and, gave me some confidence to help really grow my career and to do the hard things and have the hard conversations. And his background is in HR. And so it wasn't so much finance related, but it was more working with people and communicating and having the difficult conversations. And he was fantastic. And another mentor that I had, Mike Butler, he was a CEO of one of our companies, and one of the companies I worked for, and he's outstanding mentor. He is so positive and really was about teams and building teams and how you work within the team. Again, kind of similar, having the hard conversations, but extremely positive and really, didn't shy away from the hard conversations either, and having a lot of those tough conversations and creating opportunities to grow your courage.
It's interesting because like I asked about the mentors, and like none of them were like finance and accounting type mentors, right? It's more about the leadership skills and the team building and collaboration skills. And it's like people who aren't CFOs or work directly with CFOs sort of don't fully appreciate the strategic and the leadership element of the job.
Absolutely. And I find that part almost more important than actually the X's and O's sometimes. And I have incredible teammates that are very, very good at that, very, very good at accounting and working with the auditors, and very good in IT and very good in insurance. And I rely heavily on them.
Yeah. And yeah, those skills are invaluable, but like to get to the next level, you need the people-centric skills. So cool. But I want to check, is it fair to call your organization, is it a governing body? Is that a fair way to categorize it?
100%.
Okay, cool. So, it has to be some just very unique challenges and some opportunities that come with, leading a national governing body in a sport. So what are some of the things that are, kind of a little different for your company? Because there aren't many like that, right? Governing bodies in sports in the United States.
I would say I underestimated the collective positivity when you're profitable and winning. That can't be overstated. So it is really fun, right? Even when, you have people that really don't pick the team, they don't play on the team, they don't coach the team, but everybody feels like they're a part of it, right? Everybody in every position contributes to us winning gold medals. And that's another really important part of our strategic plan. We want to win at every level and bring home gold medals. And we've been thankfully very fortunate there and successful there. So the Olympic focus is unique to companies. It is, again, kind of how we started the conversation. It's such an interesting part to have something bigger than yourself to be a part of, which is a lot of fun. And there's a camaraderie that comes with that that's really neat. Recently, we've had some more challenges with administration and some of the things that we've had to put in place for good reason. Things that happened with Safe Sport and some of the other unfortunate incidents with other national governing bodies. It's a big job to try and make sure that safety is a priority within our organization. And we believe it is. And we believe we do a good job with it. And we do the best we can to train people and background checks and everything else to make sure that the game is as safe as it possibly can be. And not just from Safe Sport perspective, but also, it's a rough game and it's funny. Somebody said you've got knives on your feet, clubs in your hand, and a bullet you're shooting, and you're in an arena, right? So you put it that way, and it can be a little tough. So we want to make sure that people are safe too in the arena, and with body checking and everything else. So that part is really different too. I would say those are the two things that come to mind initially.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm old enough to remember not every goalie even wore a face mask, which seems, and there was some, they just insisted that it would impact their peripheral vision and they were willing to take a cup. It's like, well, with hindsight, it seems like it's absolutely nuts, but yeah, safety for sports, particularly, because you're such role models for young people too. You want to have the best practices for it, but yeah, not a lot of the CFOs, the other guests that I've had talk about that sort of thing on their jobs. So. But what was the quote? You said you have knives on your shoes and clubs in your
I
hands?
hope I'm getting this right. Yeah,
Okay.
knives on your feet, clubs in your hand, and you're shooting bullets.
Yeah, because how hard does an elite shooter, that the hockey puck must be going 100 miles an hour, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's fun to watch the NHL All-Stars. They'll have these tests, how fast people are skating and how hard they're shooting the puck. And yeah, up high 90s, 100. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty fast.
That's kind of insane. So, but cool. Well, you mentioned sort of the budgeting thing before we went on the air, and right now you're sort of in your budgeting and planning cycles. And I'm curious, because budgeting and planning supports the strategy the other way around, but it must be pretty unique because you've got sort of your ongoing everyday type of operations, and then you've got these sort of unicorn type events, that little thing, the Olympics, and then World Hockey Championships. So how does that impact your budgeting and strategic planning when we've got these individually significant events, which are critical?
Yes. So the Olympics are certainly a big part every 4 years. And we also are very excited to announce that we're hosting the Men's World Junior Championships this year. And that is, the last time we did that was in 2018. And so I miss it. We actually are hosting it in 2026. And the last time that we hosted it was in 2018. And so we go these long time periods without hosting. And that is probably an incredibly important event to us financially. And so we go through these long periods of time, right, where we may not be as financially fluid or as financially well off as we do during these years. But the years where we are able to host the Men's World Junior Championships, Fortunately, historically has been very profitable for us, and we anticipate it's going to be an incredible event, and hopefully profitable for our host and for USA Hockey as well.
Well, and when you host it, is that like the Olympics? Everything takes place at one city, or is it across the country? Or
It's in one city,
okay,
and this year, and in 2026, it'll be, I believe, in 2 rinks. But internationally, it's probably as big or bigger. It's a very big event, especially in Europe. You know, people love to go, and they come from all over, all countries to come to that event. And it's really a signature marquee event for the game of ice hockey, and it's the IIHF event. International Ice Hockey event, Federation event, and it's a really big deal and very exciting for all of us involved.
okay, cool. That's interesting. So that's pretty exciting stuff, and it happens once every 8 years. Is that kind of the typical cycle that we get to host it?
Well, what happens every year, and it could be every 5, 7, 10. We just don't know when we'll get to host it again, but we're hopeful that we'll get the opportunity to host it again in the not too distant future.
Okay, and this is on the men's side, right? You said?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, good. So cool. Okay, cool. So one thing that, it occurs to me, every business was impacted by COVID-19. Yours, I would think, certainly more than most, and even the financial viability of an organization that makes its money by hosting in-person events. So how did you adapt? How did COVID-19 and the shutdowns impact your operations and your strategic planning? Because it, thank God, it was relatively short. We at the time we didn't know it wouldn't be multiple years. But it had to just change everything, I would think.
Yeah, it was almost exactly 4 years ago, right, this week. And
oh yeah, my goodness, yeah. So
and I remember we were, in our conference room and talking about the arena. And we thought we just shut down our arena in Plymouth, Michigan for the weekend. And little did we know, in Michigan in particular, right, things were shut down for a long time, and every state was different. And it was challenging, I think, for everyone in every company. But ice arenas and rinks in particular, we just didn't know, is it airborne? Is it contagious? And, we would love, different states were able to keep things open more so than other states. And so that was a bit challenging. It was the communications challenge for sure. From a financial perspective, it was challenging. We had some nuances. One of the things is my prior role really prepared us for navigating this very well. And so we ran our financials in parallel. We went to kind of a forecast, if you will, and daily we looked at our days cash on hand, and we managed that very closely. The timing of our revenue happened to be very advantageous for USA Hockey because we open up our registration, which is 65% of our revenue, in April. And so then, it kind of reaches a peak in September, October, and then a lot of that cash kind of propels us for the rest of the year. And so we were fortunate, we'd collected a lot of our revenue, and we didn't have as many expenses because we weren't traveling as often. So I know this is a little bit in the weeds, but that certainly helped us preserve our cash. But it was a very difficult time for players and families and our volunteers and all staff. It was certainly very challenging, but I think we weathered it very well.
Yeah, because it's just one of those things. There's no way you could plan for a pandemic that's going to shut down your sport, right? I mean,
we didn't see that coming in risk management.
No. I mean, you come up with like the 10 worst case scenarios. Not many people would have even thought to include that. So, but
right.
Yeah,
and you probably had a lot of people, that were dealing with that.
Yeah, indeed. And one of the not on this podcast, but she spoke at one of our conferences. She's the CFO of the Ladies Professional Golfing Association. And they were really, in a lot of trouble because that's such a truly global sport. Most sports are global in these days, but you'd host an event in Florida, but you'd theoretically have people coming from 30 or 40 countries, and just the players, by the way. And, no other sport has that to the same extent. So, it was truly challenging to survive that. So good for you. Challenge it. You did. And the organization's stronger than ever, I believe, right?
We are. I'm happy to report, and God willing, we'll stay that way.
There you go. So I'd like to get an understanding, what are some of the key initiatives and projects that USA is currently focusing on? And, what can we expect in the future from USA Hockey, other than hopefully a bunch of gold medals? So
I like that. We are extremely focused right now on IT. So around 2017, 2018, as an organization, this was about a year or two before I got here. I got here in 2019. There was this change in our strategy from an IT perspective that we thought, you know what? We have all these unique systems that are specific to USA Hockey. Let's try and build them ourselves. So we'll build them for ourselves. We'll hire developers. We'll hire a IT director that really's got some great experience with this. We'll bring it all in-house. And then we could even monetize it, which would be great. And it sounded terrific at the time. And we've struggled with that. It's been very challenging. And so we're in the process now of, rather than kind of bringing everything in-house and having a lot of developers that you're working with, we still have developers we're working with, but we're really trying to outsource some of our systems that we can. So for example, our learning management system, we have 95,000 people a year that go through our learning management system. And it is just unbelievable to support 3 million lines of code and things, that have been out of support since 2008. It's just, it's overwhelming. And so, you know what, can we go back on that? I probably don't want to advertise that because just with cybersecurity and that kind of stuff, probably not good for me to say that part.
Sounds good. Do you want us to just edit out, or do you want me to ask the question again and you can take it from the beginning?
Your preference, whatever you'd like.
Okay, why don't I ask the question again, and then I'm going to take this moment to drink because I can feel my voice drying.
Okay.
And as long as we're on a break, I want to make sure that I didn't ask by mistake an inappropriate question, because I was referring to your picking up hockey, and I referred to it as girls' sports and boys' sports. You were like a preteen then, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, 13. No, I think nothing wrong with anything you said, but I appreciate you checking.
Yeah, I mean, if you were 20, I wouldn't want to call them girl skirts and boy skirts, but I was pretty sure.
I'm impressed. That's pretty, I'm impressed that you mentioned that.
Well, it's really weird because most of my coworkers are women, and like they will refer to other female professionals as girls. And I'm like, no, in fact, there's one nice person, but she refers to she called somebody, she's a partner at KPMG as one of our sponsors, and she's like 45-year-old and has 3 kids. I'm like, look, she's a partner at 45 and 3 kids. I'm pretty sure she's not a girl anymore. But anyway, okay. So anyway, I'll ask the question again. So Kelly, if you could share with us, what are some of the key initiatives or projects that USA Hockey is focusing on from a financial perspective, and how are these likely to shape the future of the organization?
Important question, and I'm glad you asked. One of our major priorities right now is IT. And how do we revolutionize the way that we're doing business now to kind of bring us as current as possible, and also think into the future about how we want to use an analogy, skate to where the puck's going to be, as Wayne Gretzky used to say. How do we create systems that are going to be more forward-looking and cutting edge, if you will? Historically, back in 17, 18, we changed our IT strategy entirely. And we wanted to bring everything in-house and do it ourselves, and then potentially have the opportunity to monetize that. Well, we're not an IT company, and unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition like we had imagined it would. And so we're in the middle of changing our strategy right now to switching what we can to SaaS products. So for example, the learning management system is what we're really focused on now, and looking at different learning management systems. And we've partnered with a firm to help us through that. We've really invested a lot of time, money, and energy in doing that, but we're really excited about where we're going and where we think the future will be. And that's been one of the biggest projects we're doing to date.
Interesting. So everyone's talking about Gen AI. Is this something that you're embracing yet, or is that more down the road? Because a lot of CFOs still aren't sure that they want to be amongst the early adopters of it.
I love it.
Yeah. So
I'm fascinated with it. I understand the limitations and some of the concerns. But I think it helps us in what we're doing every day. I mean, some of the companies that you see that are helping in finance and accounting too, just being able to use technology to not have to input in every invoice into your computer system. I mean, I think, is it 100% all the time? No, but I think it really frees up time, energy, and money for people to work on higher level, more strategic things. And so I think I'm encouraged by it and I like it. I can't say I use it in my job other than, some of the memos I sent. We'll get some feedback there, but I think it's pretty powerful and will continue to get better and better.
yeah, it is remarkable. It's a technology. I don't know about you. I'd never heard of generative AI until the rest of the world heard of it. I mean, not even, it's one day nobody'd heard of it, and the next day seemingly everybody heard of it. But 2 years ago, I couldn't have even guessed what it was. So you too?
Moves fast, doesn't it?
So a moment ago, you mentioned Wayne Gretzky, and I just want to preface this by saying I grew up in Massachusetts in the 1960s and 70s. Wayne Gretzky or Bobby Orr, who's the greatest hockey player who's ever lived?
Ooh,
So I put you on the spot there. I have an
tough
opinion on it, but I'd love to
question.
hear yours.
I'm gonna have to go with Bobby Orr
Just because I'm from Massachusetts, or
for a number of
yeah,
reasons. But I think it's amazing what a difference the equipment makes too, even within a
yeah.
few years. I mean, for example, the skates today are so lightweight, you can just fly. And so I'd have to, it's a tough choice, but I'd have to go with Bobby Orr.
Yes, and to anyone from Detroit who's listening, I apologize for not mentioning Gordie Howe, but I never saw him play. So, or when I did, maybe he was pretty old at the time. I seems to me he played like into his 50s. So that's an argument right there that he was the best player ever. So
Great player too.
is there like a female Wayne Gretzky, like someone who is like kind of light years ahead of her contemporaries, or
Oh my gosh, the talent that we have
yeah,
in the women's game is just incredible. Um, of course, I'd have to pick an American player, and
right
I
on. So
probably would otherwise, but um, I might get myself into trouble playing favorites. So I would say we've got an incredible team. We've got some youngsters that are up and coming, young women that are up and coming that'll be very, very good. It's an exciting time to be in women's hockey and be a part of it. I think we're going to have a really, really, really strong team coming up, and we do now too. So it's exciting where it's going.
very diplomatic. If you get bored with finance, you should maybe go to the diplomacy course, something like that. So, but you're right. I mean, just the quality of the game, that's how much it's improved in the last 20 years. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
So, and you must be proud to, play a big, big part in that. So,
fun to be a part of it.
yeah, it's got to be. So I wanted to ask, when I visited your website, and there was a lot of talk about safety, which you've already discussed. But also there was a lot of emphasis on exclusivity and just making the sport more inclusive. I'm sorry, inclusivity, and making the sport more inclusive and more accessible for everybody. And, can you tell us a little about that? And that must just be a source of pride for you.
It definitely is a source of pride for us. It's something that we put a lot of time and energy into and are committed to making our game as welcoming and inclusive as we possibly can. As with any sport, right? It's a journey, but it's really important. And I firmly believe the game of hockey teaches people so much, not just about the game of hockey, but about life and being good stewards and good people. And typically, I may be a little biased, but you see that hockey players are typically quite humble people. And it's a great game to be a part of. It's given me so much in my life that I would love to share it with everybody and anybody that's open to it. And so it is a really big part of our commitment. We also are one of our biggest partner with the NHL, and they're very committed to that as well. And so we work together to make every effort we can to make it as inclusive and accessible as possible. And I think we've done a pretty good job, and we're just getting started.
Good for you. And that's fantastic. It's funny you mentioned like hockey players are friendlier because like in Boston, we don't have a lot of movie stars who live in Boston. I suppose now we have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but so like athletes are our celebrities. And so growing up around here, it was always that it was well known that the hockey players were, a lot more approachable. The Bruins players were friendlier than say the Celtics, Red Sox, or Patriots. But I have to admit, we always kind of attributed to the fact that most of them grew up in Canada, as opposed to that it was hockey versus another sport. But you think hockey players generally, even like American hockey players, are just kind of friendly?
I do. I think the Canadian, you might be onto something with the Canadian thing. That could be too. But I do. I think it's part of the game and part of just really focus kind of on the team first. I do think it's part of the culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because as an adult, I got to know Ray Bork a little bit. We're certainly not friends, but he's like you wouldn't think he's, one of the 10 best hockey players who ever lived if he still is considered in that category. But he's just like a very
Legend.
normal guy, so just a very friendly guy, talks to you. He worked out at the same gym as me. As,
Oh yeah.
as you might imagine, he outperformed me a little bit at the gym. So
I don't believe it.
yeah, oh yeah, I could match your elite hockey player for sure. But I want to last question, not the last question, but I want to ask you. You've got a lot going on. You're the CFO, highly visible role, and I know you're very philanthropic here with a couple of you do some volunteer work in the community. So how do you balance all of the things that you have going on in your life to have a fulfilling life outside of your professional self?
I don't know if I'd say I balance. I try to balance, but I like to, if I'm doing something, I want to go all in on it. And I've really enjoyed being a part of some of the groups that I've joined recently and have met some really wonderful people and learned a lot. And I think it's rewarding for me. And so a lot of it gives me energy back. And so it's not, when you're getting energy back from it, it's not as hard to balance and juggle those things.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So cool. Well, I always like to ask my guest, is there like a fun fact about you or something about you that when people learn it surprises you? And for me, that people who don't know are surprised to learn that I'm a big headbanger. That's how I got the name for this podcast. But I listen to Metallica and AC/DC and those sorts of bands. But do you have a fun fact or a surprising fact about you?
I would say a fun fact or surprise. There's certainly a lot of examples I could give to embarrass myself. I would say something that was really kind of fun is after the '98 Olympics, I had a friend of mine that said, "Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Would you like to come down and be in this movie called Olympic Glory?" And it's an IMAX movie. And so that was a lot of fun. I got to participate in that and just had a ball. It was a lot of fun going down to the arena and, reenacting the game. I tell you, as the actors sure do have a hard job having to do the same thing with as much enthusiasm as you did the first time on the 100th time. And so that's kind of fun. That was kind of a fun fact, I think.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I that movie actually is familiar. I'm wondering if I saw you in a movie all those years ago. So, but that would be kind of
You might not recognize me, but you maybe did.
well, I had hair back then, so not a lot of it, admittedly, but I did have some. So cool. Well, I'd love to get your advice. We talked earlier about mentoring, but any advice you can give to the next generation of CFOs so they achieve some of the same success that you and other members of your generation have achieved?
I would say we talked a little bit about working backward. We talked a little bit about courage. I think the other piece that has been really important to my career has been curiosity and just being relentlessly curious about the business, about everything, but about the business. And if you find the job or something that looks like it might interest you, or a career path that might interest you, or someone that interests you, just to get really curious about it. And I find that is really helpful in determining what you want to do in your career. And it's been very valuable for me.
I think that's great. And I've always thought I'd take somebody who's intellectually curious over somebody who's just pure smart but isn't intellectually curious. So I mean they're both valuable, obviously, right? But But cool. Well, anyway, this has been great. I really enjoyed hearing your story, and I'm sure our listeners will too. And with that, I want to thank you for being a guest on Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, and also just give you the final word.
I think you said it well. I couldn't improve on it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.